In this video, we will discuss about how nanoparticles can be synthesized using biological methods. Nanoparticles can be synthesized using living organisms, which includes microorganisms, both bacteria and fungi, as well as plants. This kind of synthesis of nanoparticles using biochemicals is also referred to as chemosynthesis in living organisms. This method is catalyzed by some of the enzymes which are synthesized by these living organisms themselves. We know that living organisms are constituted of both organic as well as inorganic materials. Inorganic materials which are found inside the organisms is what we call as biocomposites. To make nanoparticles using living organisms, there are some specific requirements. Like, you need a precursor substance from which you will synthesize the nanoparticles. Like, if you wish to synthesize silver nanoparticles, you need to have whole silver in the form of silver-based salts. Also, there has to be a source of energy. There have to be enzymes which act as catalyst, and there have to be agents which carry out the reduction of the whole material to synthesize nanoparticles. Microorganisms are considered to be the tiny engineers, which are the best examples because they have the tendency to adapt in presence of toxic components as well, like heavy metals. We can make use of these microorganisms to synthesize nanoparticles of the toxic elements as well. Why microorganisms? Microorganisms are known to survive in challenging environment. They can survive in presence of xenobiotics. They can survive in presence of metal ions. Metal ions can be very easily converted to nanoparticles of a defined size and shape. So if you want to make nanoparticles of cadmium, silver, gold, lead, you can make use of both bacterial as well as fungal species. What is the advantage of biological synthesis methods over the chemosynthetic methods? That's the chemical way of synthesis. The biological synthesis methods are environmentally and economically green. So it's not going to cause any harm to the environment, and at the same time, the expense associated with it is comparatively low. As you're not making use of any toxic chemicals, this entire process will be referred to as a very safe process. Moreover, the nanoparticles which are produced by the living organisms, they may also be coated with some proteins or peptides. Because whenever you try to grow microorganisms in presence of heavy metals, these heavy metals can also be toxic to these organisms. So to avoid the toxicity caused by these heavy metals, they coat these particles with proteins or peptides. Now this will avoid any kind of aggregation of nanoparticles that can take place, because there is going to be repulsion between these particles as they are coated with proteins and peptides. So the problem of aggregation of nanoparticles, which is one of the basic issues in physical and chemical methods of synthesis, will automatically be avoided. This method is very simple to carry out, and the scale up is also very easy. So if you want to carry out a large scale production of nanoparticles, this can be a method of choice. Most importantly, as it's eco-friendly, this method is being adopted by several industries to synthesize nanomaterials which are used in food and pharma industries. Hence, your microorganisms can be referred to as nanofactories because they are the actual factories for synthesis of nanomaterials. Also, because the environment is contaminated with a lot of heavy metals, the microorganisms living in such environment have been able to adapt to the presence of heavy metals, and for eradicating the heavy metals, they are sequestering these metals in the form of nanoparticles. So their adaptability is turning into a commercial use in today's world. We know that prokaryotes, they have this tendency to exhibit tolerance and resistance against several toxic metals as well as xenobiotics which are there in the environment. Now, how do they develop this resistance? Number one is that they will not allow these toxic chemicals to accumulate inside them. So how do they achieve this? By modulating their transport. It means that they will have active efflux pumps. Efflux means throwing something out. and letting it not accumulate inside the cells. Second, they can carry out some reduction oxidation reactions in order to change the chemical so that they are not toxic anymore. And finally, if we are talking about metals, these organisms can sequester them and they can also accumulate them in a specific compartment inside the cell so that they do not lead to any toxic conditions inside the cell. The sequestration would involve some modification of these heavy metals by tagging them to some proteins, to some peptides, thereby nullifying the toxicity that they carry out. But if you talk about eukaryotic sequestration, let me tell you that there are some of the major molecules which play a very, very important role, like glutathione, phytochelatan, and cysteine-rich metallothioneins. These are those components which are responsible for sequestering the heavy metals in case of eukaryotes without leading to any kind of toxicity or without giving rise to any reactive oxygen species. Out of these, glutathione and metallothioneins are also found in prokaryotes. But if you talk about the cysteine-rich or rather the phytochelatins, it is something which is seen only in the eukaryotic organisms. So when it comes to microorganisms, please remember that fungi, bacteria, actinomycetes members all can be utilized to synthesize nanoparticles. Other than these, you can also make use of plant extracts and enzymes which have the ability to carry out reduction to synthesize nanoparticles from the whole metal. It has also been seen that DNA, membrane components, viruses, and diatoms have been utilized in the past as templates for synthesizing nanoparticles. Several biological molecules themselves, because their size is in the range of nanometers, they are considered to be nanoparticles, whether it be proteins, lipids, or even nucleic acids. Let us talk about the synthesis process using microorganisms in a little more detail. Here we need to understand the cell-metal interaction. Several microorganisms have the tendency to produce H2S, and this helps them to, in a way, convert the metal ions to metal sulfide. H2S is produced by oxidation of organic matter, and this H2S can then interact with the metal ions, forming metal sulfide, which is extracellularly deposited. These extracellularly deposited metal ions now are reduced in size further, and which can be then used as nanoparticles. Here we are not just converting the metal ions to their non-toxic form by coating them with certain components of the cell like proteins or peptides and reducing its toxicity, but we are also synthesizing nanoparticles out of the whole metals. Let me tell you that several microorganisms also secrete polymeric materials like polysaccharides. These polysaccharides can also be responsible for coating the nanoparticles and reducing their toxicity, which is basically coming from the heavy metal nature. Several nanoparticles have been synthesized wherein the metal ions are interacting with phosphate, hydroxyl, carboxyl based anionic groups, which then bind extracellularly to the metal ions and reduce the toxicity associated with it. Synthesis of nanoparticles may involve not just redox reactions, but also methylation and demethylation based reactions. Pseudomonas sutzeri, which is known as the AG259 strain, has been isolated from several silver mines for their amazing ability of synthesizing silver nanoparticles. Silver nanoparticles are utilized in ointment composition because it is considered to be one of the most effective antiseptics. Also, whenever Pseudomonas species are challenged with high concentration of AgNO3, it is seen that they have the ability to reduce them to form silver nanoparticles. Also, Lactobacillus strain, which is found in buttermilk, is known to have the ability to carry out reduction of metals to form nanoparticles. Fusarium oxysporum is another organism which is utilized on a large scale to synthesize both gold and silver nanoparticles, while Thermomonospora species is utilized to synthesize gold nanoparticles extracellularly. Verticillium species is going to synthesize these nanoparticles intracellularly. So the mechanisms will differ whether the nanoparticles are sequestered intracellularly or they are deposited extracellularly. According to it, the extraction process will change. So production process is going to be completely dependent on the organism that you are making use of and the mechanism that they are making use of. Because some organisms, they sequester the nanoparticles in the cell membrane, while some have the ability to accumulate them inside an intracellular compartment. We need to understand that some of these metals may be really toxic even to these nanoparticle producing organisms. And hence, these organisms produce agents which can combine with these heavy metals to reduce their toxicity, like phytogelatin cadmium complex. Cadmium is really very toxic for the organisms which produce nanoparticles of cadmium also. But then organisms have the ability to secrete phytogelatin, which is going to form this complex. In several cases, ABC transporters are also made use of as an efflux pump to release out all these cadmium nanoparticles out of the cell so that toxicity can be reduced. In several organisms, you will also see that cadmium is combined with sulfur to form cadmium sulfide. And this takes place in specific vacuolar structures inside the cell. Like microorganisms, you can also make use of plant extracts. Obviously, plant extracts are going to be rich in phytochemicals, and these phytochemicals will help to reduce the heavy metals to nanoparticle state. Like leaves of geranium plant. The extract of the leaves will help you to synthesize gold nanoparticles. It has also been observed that plant-associated fungus, so both the fungal extract and the plant extract, can be made use of to synthesize nanoparticles at the same time. It is also being said that there could be some evolutionary relationship wherein there has been some exchange of genes between the plant and fungus. And that's the reason why both of them possess the ability to synthesize nanoparticles. Coletotrichum species is one of the most common species that is spoken about when you speak about silver and gold nanoparticle synthesis. It's also seen that organisms like diatoms, they have the ability to take up silica and they reduce them to silica nanoparticles. Silefin is one of the most common silica nanoparticles wherein these nanoparticles are tagged with lysine residues or even with polyamides. You will also see that these silica nanoparticles then are precipitated out as silica nanospheres. So there are a variety of organisms which have this ability to synthesize nanoparticles, and it's not just microorganisms, but even organisms like plants. Proteins and other biomolecules can be used as templates for nanoparticle synthesis. Various inorganic biomaterials like carbonates, phosphates, silicates, these also can be converted to nanoparticles. DNA and ferritin, this can be converted to nanoparticles. Several colloidal proteins which stores iron like ferritin, that can be converted to nanoparticles, and it's referred to as apoferritin. They can be purified very easily and it can be used for commercial purposes. You can make use of specific chemicals like sodium acetate, thioglycolic acid, or NaCl and TES, that is N-tris-methyl amino ethanosulfonic acid, to carry out the reduction of the inorganic biomaterials to form nanoparticles. Cadmium acetate and sodium sulfide have been used in combination to form cadmium nanoparticles. And let me tell you that when you talk about biological methods of synthesis, we have to understand that the organism which is responsible for carrying out the synthesis, its threshold of toxicity has to be known. Because if you are going to expose it to heavy metals, and if you are crossing that threshold, that can inhibit or curb the growth of that organism itself. So the synthesis will stop. So before you start with the use of these organisms for synthesizing nanoparticles, the threshold of their tolerance for that particular element has to be clearly defined. In the next video, we will look at some of the physical methods that are utilized for synthesis of nanoparticles.